Derek Chauvin, the officer who was seen kneeling on George Floyd's neck before he died, is due in court on Monday. Meanwhile, the other three officers on the scene are also now facing charges of their own. Our legal panel joins us now to break down all of these charges in this case, and we have former U.S. prosecutor and director of the Executive Office for United States Attorneys, Guy Lewis, and criminal defense attorney Joseph Marone. Guys, let's start with Derek Chauvin. He's now facing up to 40 years in prison after the charges against him were upgraded from third-degree murder to second-degree murder. It is certainly a step in the right direction for George Floyd's family, who wants him to be charged with first-degree murder. But Guy, I'll start with you. Does this upgraded charge make it more difficult for prosecutors to secure a guilty verdict?
That's a great question, Kristen. In some ways it does. They've charged probably the most aggressive charge that the facts would allow. And I wish I could tell you that the hard part was behind us, but it's not. Now we move into the litigation phase, and there's going to be very good lawyers who come in and contest these charges. And even though you've got the video right before you, these lawyers are going to say, look, we don't know what happened before. We don't know what happened after. The ME reports are contradictory. And so there's a lot of work to do here to move this case forward.
Joseph, if you were Chauvin's attorney, how would you defend him, and would these upgraded charges change the way that you defend him?
Well, unfortunately, defending Chauvin, you have to live with the video, and the video in itself, it's not just what you see in the video; it's what the video actually, the evidence it gives you, and it gives you a restraint of over 8.5 minutes, 2.5 at the end, which there was no response. So the question first becomes:
how do you defend against that?
Well, I think the battle is going to be on the level of charges. You have a second-degree murder charge, which really is a felony murder charge. Can you prove that he intended to assault Floyd and not effectuate an arrest? And that's really going to be the battle. I mean, obviously, the Chauvin's argument is going to be he was attempting to effectuate an arrest, and ultimately this was reckless behavior. But reckless behavior is third-degree murder. It's not second-degree. And you're really, if you're Chauvin's attorney, you're trying to get a lesser charge to save him some jail time. And that's going to really be the battle. I mean, ultimately, there's also a manslaughter charge, which I think is inevitable. But really, the core charge here, which is third-degree charges, I really think what fits it. The question is, can the defense lawyer get the case down to that? And that's really going to be the complication.
So, Joseph, now the other three officers that were involved in George Floyd's death, they've been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder. And we've already gotten a taste of what their defense is going to be. Two of them are now essentially blaming Chauvin for all of this and saying that he was the senior officer on the scene and he should be the one that's responsible, not them. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, it's going to be every man for himself at this point, because if you are found guilty of aiding and abetting with second degree, you're looking at 40 years, especially there's two younger officers there that were only on the force for a short period of time. But if you look at the three accomplices, Theo's not even touching him. I think they have a really weak case against Theo, but the other two officers that are actually physically handling Floyd, in proving aiding and abetting, not only does the Chauvin have to be found guilty of the underlying crime, but those other two officers have to know what crime he was trying to effectuate. They're obviously going to say he was trying to complete an arrest versus an actual assault, and you have to prove that. So it's going to be difficult. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if those younger officers are looking for some form of cooperation here to get some leniency and really go against Chauvin, because that's really where it's going to be.
Guy, how strong of a case do you think the prosecution has against these other three officers?
Joe makes some good points, Kristen. I don't think their case is overwhelming by any stretch of the imagination. One of the officers, this was his third day on the job. Another officer, this was his fourth day on the job. Chauvin's the training officer. Their lawyers are going to say, look, what am I supposed to do? I'm 3 days on the job. I'm supposed to tell him, don't do what you're doing. He's the senior man there. And indeed, at one point, one of the officers said, hey, should we turn him over? Should we do something different? And Chauvin said no. So I think Joe makes some good points. You may see some cooperation, somebody strike a plea bargain here, and I think there's going to this case is going to be contested despite the video, which. You know, listen, go back to Rodney King, Kristen. We saw that, remember that case in '91. We saw that case on video. Those officers beat the living dog out of that man. That case was tried in a state court. What happened the first time around? Not guilty, despite what we saw on that video. So I think there's still a lot of work to do here.
All right, Guy and Joseph, I believe we lost Joseph just in time, but Guy and Joseph, thank you so much for your time and expertise. Really appreciate it.
Ex-Minneapolis cop Derek Chauvin bail set at up to $1.25 million for George Floyd murder charges. Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis police officer charged with murdering George Floyd during an arrest, had his bail set at up to $1.25 million Monday. Floyd, who was black, died May 25 after Chauvin knelt on his neck to restrain him for nearly 9 minutes while he was being detained on suspicion of using a counterfeit $20 bill to make a purchase. The incident has sparked protests nationwide. Chauvin, who is white, is charged with second and third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. The 44-year-old former cop, who has been in jail for nearly 2 weeks, appeared in Hennepin County District Court via a remote video feed, wearing an orange jumpsuit and blue mask, with handcuffs. Chauvin will have to post $1.25 million bail if he wants to be released with no conditions, Judge Jean Nice Redding ordered. 3 other ex-cops involved in the arrest of the 46-year-old Floyd were charged last week with aiding and abetting both second-degree murder and second-degree manslaughter. The 3 other men, J. Alexanderkin, 26, Thomas Lane, 37, and 34-year-old Tou Thao, were arraigned last week. They were ordered held in lieu of $1 million bail with no conditions, and on lieu of $750,000 bail with conditions that mirror those set for Chauvin on Monday. All 4 cops were fired a day after Floyd's death, when a video of the incident was widely disseminated. Chauvin's next court hearing is set for June 29.
I'm grieved and I'm hurt being a black New Zealander.
George Floyd did not deserve to die.
Even though we weren't physically in the U.S., our hearts are.
We just want to be treated equally.
The death of George Floyd has affected loads of us. Many of you have seen the video in the US of a white policeman kneeling on the neck of George Floyd. He was an unarmed black man. I've been seeing thousands of people protesting against police brutality and racism.
So I wanted to find out why black communities around the world have taken to the streets. Tens of thousands of New Zealanders have come out in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. Masper Q helped organise some of them.
Growing up, I was called the N-word. I was discriminated against and was profiled by police. And us as a nation, we're benefactors of black culture in so many ways, so I think we have an extra obligation on top of the basic humanitarian one to stand up for injustice.
Mika Clifford is originally from America, but now lives in Berlin.
Get up and do something!
She organised a march to the US Embassy.
Here in Germany, I came for school and I was told that to constantly perform pieces about the injustices that African Americans face would put me in a box, as if it was a bad thing. Seeing that video of George Floyd triggered a lot in me, and it has really hindered my ability to sleep, and that's why I decided to organize the event.
In France, some have drawn similarities between the death of George Floyd and Adama Traoré.
The 24-year-old died in 2016 after he was detained by French police. An official report indicates he died of heart failure, possibly caused by an underlying health condition. But another autopsy requested by his family said it was likely he suffocated and died when police restrained him face down. The officers who detained him were cleared by a police investigation, but his case became a rallying cry against police brutality in France.
So I decided to join the manifestation because I felt like it was the perfect moment for me to go and help my brothers and sisters to put on blast the institutional racism that our dear country friends try so hard to hide.
For justice!
There was also big protests in London, where Aaliyah was marching.
I did feel triggered, as made me think of instances in the past where I have experienced racism. It was very powerful walking and marching with people who are not of the black community, knowing that you have those supports from other humans who are from different ethnic backgrounds, religions. It was so empowering.
Seeing the multiple videos of black people getting beaten for no reason by the police has triggered so many emotions in me. And honestly, I can relate to it on a personal level. And I just feel like I'm such a disadvantage just because of my hair and the color of my skin. And I find like this is just so wrong because I was born this way. There's nothing I can do about it. We just want to be treated equally